Hi friends, welcome to Neo IAS Daily Current Affairs. Today, the 28th of November, we have these topics for discussion. The topics are, as you can see here, NPA, Logix India 2019, International Gita Festival, Sustainable Blue Economy Conference, Mission Raksha Gyan Shakti, HISIS, UNSC 1267 and Danka Tribes, plus our daily sessions of MAP aided program and PQRS. So we'll move on to the details of the topic. We'll see them one by one. Let's begin with NPA. NPA means non-performing assets, and we are discussing NPA today because RBI pointed out that NPAs of scheduled commercial banks, they have reduced due to the efforts made by both the union government and the central bank. And this happened over the past 2 quarters. However, the profitability of banks is still impacted. Though NPAs have reduced, the profitability of banks is still impacted due to the decline in earnings from loan assets. Also, the slippage ratio has witnessed a declining trend over the past 2 quarters. So, what are the details of NPA and what do you mean by slippage ratio? We will see in the coming slides. Let's move. First, NPA. NPA, as I said, means non-performing assets. So, the money or assets which are provided by the banks to companies as loans, and sometimes they remain unpaid by these borrowers. And this late or non-payment of loans, this is defined as non-performing assets, and they are also termed as bad assets. And in India, the RBI monitors the entire banking system, and as defined by the RBI, if for a period of more than 90 days, please note a period of more than 90 days, the interest or installment amount is overdue, then that loan account can be termed as a non-performing asset. And there are many reasons for this non-performing assets. From 2000 to 2008, the Indian economy was in a boom phase, and banks, especially public sector banks, they started lending extensively to companies. However, with the financial crisis in 2008-2009, the corporate profits decreased, and also the government banned mining projects. This, in addition to the substantial delay in environmental permits, and all this affected the infrastructure and other profitable businesses. And another reason is that the relaxed lending norms adopted by banks, especially to the big corporate houses. So, all these are the reasons for summing up of the NPAs. And several measures have been adopted to solve this NPA crisis, and these measures include the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, then flexible debt restructuring, special debt restructuring, then S4A, or the scheme of sustainable structuring of stressed assets, etc. And 2 recent initiatives to resolve the NPA problem have been the recapitalization of PSBs by the government and the prompt corrective action PCA by the RBI. So, it must be noted that recapitalization of PSB is a measure by the government and PCA is a measure by the RBI. And regarding the recapitalization, in October 2017, the government announced a recapitalization package for the public sector banks, of which a portion would be from government capital infusion and the balance was to be raised from the market. And regarding the PCA, or the prompt corrective action, according to the revised guidelines of RBI, the regulator has imposed certain restrictions on banks, on those banks whose capital, asset quality and profitability which do not meet pre-specified thresholds. And another point is that all these experiments failed to produce the tangible results. So, what RBI did is that RBI scraped all these initiatives and issued revised guidelines on February 2018 for early resolution of stressed assets. So, if the borrowers and lenders, they fail to arrive at a suitable resolution plans within the specified time limit, what happens is that the NCLT, or the National Company Law Tribunal, it would be the main tool for legal resolution of NPAs, which involves big defaulters under the IBC, or the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So, the next term which we discussed in the same topic was slippage ratio. Slippage ratio is found by fresh accretion of NPAs during the year divided by total standard assets at the beginning of the year into 100. So, this gives us the slippage ratio. Simply, we can say that a falling below the current position is a slippage. That means a declining trend in slippage ratio means there is a decline in NPAs as well. So, that's all regarding the topic. The next topic of the day is Logix India 2019. The Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, Suresh Prabhu, launched the logo and brochure of Logix India 2019 in New Delhi. It aims to serve as a major initiative to improve the logistics cost effectiveness and operational efficiencies for India's global trade. It will also enable effective international trade logistics and help provide efficient, and cost-effective flow of goods on which other commercial sectors depend. And over 20 countries are going to participate in this event. Logix India 2019, it is scheduled to take place in New Delhi from 31st January to 2nd February 2019, and it is being organized by the Federation of Indian Export Organizations, or the FIEO. And through Logix India 2019, the FIEO will also focus on investment opportunities in infrastructure development, technology integration, IT enablement, all these sectors. Then comes the next topic of the day, International Gida Festival. The International Gida Festival 2018 will be organized in Kurukshetra, Haryana in December 2018. And this year, it is the third edition of this mega cultural event, where the partner country would be Mauritius and the partner state would be Gujarat. Gida Festival will also be held in Mauritius next February. And the objective behind this event is to spread the message of Gida to the world. And it is being organized to commemorate the birth of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is a sacred book of Hindus. And on the sidelines of this event, about 200 famous painters from across the country, they will draw paintings on the walls of Kurukshetra on the theme of Mahabharata under a competition, that means paint the wall competition. Another important topic of the day is Sustainable Blue Economy Conference. And this is the first global conference on sustainable blue economy, and it is being hosted by Kenya in Nairobi. And we'll discuss more on blue economy and the concept of sustainable blue economy. First, let's see the aim of the global conference. So, two aims are given here. First is to harness the potential of our oceans, seas, lakes and rivers to improve the lives of all, particularly the people in developing states, women, youth and indigenous peoples. Then, to leverage the latest innovations, scientific advancements and best practices to build prosperity while conserving our waters for future generations. Also, the Sustainable Blue Economy Conference increases the momentum of the UN, that means the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, then and the 2015 Climate Change Conference in Paris, and also the UN Ocean Conference 2017 Call to Action. Then the conference will also identify how to harness the potential of the blue economy to create jobs and combat poverty and hunger. Then it will also show how economic development and healthy oceans and waters, it can go hand in hand. Then it will capture commitments and practical actions that can be taken today. And it will also bring together the players needed to transition to a blue economy. So we have been repeating the term blue economy. What does blue economy mean? Blue economy is all about economic activities which are dependent on marine resources, and it comprises of various verticals like aquaculture, maritime tourism, blue biotechnology, ocean energy, marine mining and offshore oil and gas, etc. Regarding the case of India, India has a huge potential to expand blue economy, but we are not utilizing our marine resources to the fullest. Also, the energy resources on the surface are limited, and because of this, in the near future, the dependency on marine resources will be increased, and this will require more human resources to be deployed in this field of blue economy or environment engineering, marine engineering, etc. Then the next news of the day is Mission Raksha Gyan Shakti. The Mission Raksha Gyan Shakti was formally launched by the Defence Minister, and it aims to provide a boost to the IPR culture in indigenous defence industry. It is a part of the ongoing initiatives to enhance self-reliance in defence. The end goal of the mission is the need to migrate from the culture of seeking transfer of technology from foreign sources to generating intellectual property in India. Then one more point to be noted is that the Directorate General of Quality Assurance, or the DGQA, has been entrusted with the responsibility of coordinating and implementing the program. Then the next news of the day is HISIS. HISIS is the country's first hyperspectral imaging satellite for advanced Earth observation, and the primary goal of HISIS is to study the Earth's surface in visible, near-infrared and short-wave infrared regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. A hyperspectral imaging camera in space, it can provide well-defined images that can help to identify objects on the Earth far more clearly than regular optical or remote sensing cameras. And this will be ISRO's first full-scale working satellite with this capability. That means hyperspectral imaging capability. Also, the technology will be an added advantage for purposes such as defense, agriculture, minerals, land use, etc. So the PSLV C-43 mission, this will launch 31 satellites in 2 orbits, and HISIS is one among these 31 satellites. The rest 30 are small satellites of foreign customers, and this will be ISRO's third longest mission. And PSLV C-43 mission, this will be the third longest mission after PSLV C-35 and PSLV C-40. So what's special about this PSLV C-35 and 40? PSLV C-35 was the first spaceflight by ISRO to place satellites in 2 different orbits with a single rocket. And PSLV C-40, it successfully carried and deployed 31 satellites in sun-synchronous orbits. Then we have been discussing the term hyperspectral imaging. So what does that mean? Hyperspectral imaging uses an imaging spectrometer to collect spectral information, and the collected spectra, they are used to form an image of the target in a way that each image pixel includes a complete spectrum. So the next topic is Ironman 70.3. The world's 127th Ironman 70.3 race, and India's first. It will be held in Goa on October 2019. It is also known as half Ironman, and this is one of a series of long distance triathlon races organized by the World Triathlon Corporation, or WTC. And the 70.3, it refers to the total distance in miles which is covered in the race, consisting of 1.2 miles of swimming, 56 miles of bike riding, and 13.1 miles of running. And each distance of the swimming, bike riding and running segments, it is half the distance of that particular segment in the Ironman triathlon. The Ironman 70.3 series, it culminates each year with a world championship competition also. Then the next news of the day is UNSC 1267. UNSC is the UN Security Council, and it is a UN Security Council resolution which was passed in 1999 under Article 41 of the United Nations to establish a sanction regime against those individuals and groups which are associated with Al-Qaeda. And it was a response to the attack on the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam by Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden and other associated groups in 1999. So the sanction means that this requires the countries to immediately freeze funds, financial assets or economic resources of these individuals and entities who are designated as terrorist or terrorist organizations. And under the SCR, that means Security Council Resolution 1267, there is no scope for judicial review of the Security Council decision. And we are discussing it because this came into news. Pakistan asserted that it had not lifted its ban on Hafiz-Saeed's organizations, and these organizations includes the Lashkar-e-Taiba, then Falai Insaniyat Foundation, and they are bound by the UN resolution, that means the UNSC 1267. The anti-terrorism ordinance which was passed for the same, it has also been lapsed, and this ordinance was passed after pressure from the Financial Action Task Force, or the FATF, because the FATF decided to grey-list the country unless it cracked down on the finances of terror groups which are banned by the UN Security Council. And regarding the UN Security Council resolutions, the resolutions are formal expressions of the opinions or will of the United Nations organs, and they are not actions. And also, the resolutions adopted by the Security Council are considered binding on the nations. Then another important news of the day is Dhangar tribe. The Dhangar is a herding caste of people who are primarily residing or primarily located in the state of Maharashtra, and they are traditionally shepherds, cowherds, or blanket weavers, butchers and farmers. They are a politically highly disorganized community, and they are socially, educationally, economically, politically backward. They are classified as nomadic tribe in Maharashtra, and now the tribal MLAs of Maharashtra, they are opposing the inclusion of Dhangars in the scheduled tribe quota. So that's all regarding the Dhangar tribes. Then there is a small news capsule, tourist police, and the state must be noted, it was launched by Nagaland. The state of Nagaland launched tourist police which will work for safety and security of tourists, and they will report any crime against tourists to the nearest police station. So the last topic of the day is the concept of fog and smog. So the concept, we are going to discuss it because the Northern Railway has prepared an action plan including the using of fog safe devices and detonators to ensure safer travel during fog hit winters. So what is fog? Fog is a weather condition in which very small drops of water come together to form a thick cloud close to the land or sea. Then regarding smog, smog is defined as a mix of ground level ozone and other pollutants. So we'll see them in detail. First is fog. Fog, as I already mentioned, is a weather condition in which very small drops of water, they come together to form a thick cloud. And it disperses light and it even reduces visibility. And it is heavily influenced by nearby bodies of water, topography and wind conditions. And it is really troubling because it affects many human activities such as shipping, travel, etc. There are many different types of fog. They are given here. I will explain them one by one. First is radiation fog. The radiation fog typically forms at night when the surface heat is radiated into the space. As the Earth's surface cools, the air reaches complete humidity and this in turn becomes a fog. And the second is advection fog. Advection fog also closely resembles the radiation fog, but it is formed when warm, moist air moves horizontally over a cold surface, causing condensation. And one common type of advection fog is sea fog. Then the third type is upslope fog, and this forms in higher elevations such as mountains or hills. Winds push moist air up to the slope to a particular point where the air begins to condensate, and thus fog is formed. And also the upslope fog, it can be very expansive. Often it covers the entire mountain ranges. Then the next type is ice fog. It is formed from ice crystals, as the name suggests, and ice fog forms when the air temperature is below the freezing point. The next is freezing fog. Freezing fog is composed of supercooled water droplets which change from liquid to ice upon surface contact, and objects exposed to freezing fog, they are often covered in an ice layer. Then comes evaporation or mixing fog, and this occurs when water vapor from evaporation mixes with cooler and drier air. And finally comes the steam fog, and this forms when cooler air drifts over warm water, whereas the frontal fog forms when warm rain droplets evaporate into cooler air near the surface. So we have been discussing fog. Now comes smoke. Smoke, as I said, means fog plus smoke. Smoke is often categorized as being either summer smoke or winter smoke. Summer or photochemical smoke, it forms when organic compounds and nitrogen oxides, they chemically react with sunlight to create ozone. And winter smoke is characterized by combined effect of temperature inversions and combustion emissions. The term smoke, as I already said, it originated as a blend of smoke and fog, and it causes breathing ailments such as asthma, lung infections and even eye irritations. It also harms the environment and damages plants and forests. So that's all regarding the news pieces for today. Now we'll move on to our daily session of MAP aided program. For that, we have the Kerch Strait. Kerch Strait appeared in news today. It is also a news piece of today. We have added it in the map session. Kerch Strait is a strait connecting Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. It separates the Kerch Peninsula of Crimea in the west from the Taman Peninsula of Russia, and it was formerly known as the Cimmerian Bosporus. You can see in the map the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait in between. It is given in the map here. And this appeared in news because Russia captured 3 Ukrainian naval ships in Kerch Strait, and in response to this, the Ukraine declared martial law. So that's all regarding the MAP aided program. Then we move on to our final session of PQRS. For that, we have the question here. Consider the following: star tortoise, monitor lizard, pygmy hog and spider monkey. Which of the above are naturally found in India? So, naturally found in India. So, first is the star tortoise. The Indian star tortoise is a species of tortoise found in dry areas and scrub forest of India and both Sri Lanka. Also, the species is quite popular in exotic pet trade. So, that means that it is naturally found in India. Then the second one is monitor lizards. Monitor lizards are large reptiles which are found in Africa and all across Asia. That also means that it is naturally found in India. Now comes the third one, that means pygmy hawk. It is an endangered species of small wild pig which was previously spread across India, Nepal and Bhutan, but now it is only found in Assam. So that means that it is also naturally found in India. Then the last one is spider monkeys. Spider monkeys are found in tropical forest of Central and South America, and hence the fourth option, that means spider monkeys is incorrect. It is not naturally found in India. So the answer is A, 1, 2 and 3 only. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening.